The Stargate's ninth chevron locked with a resonant clang that echoed through the gate room of an abandoned ancient outpost on P3X-774. SG-1 had come searching for technology, following fragmentary Takra intelligence about a research facility predating the Goa'uld Empire. What they found instead was a mystery that would change everything. The wormhole erupted outward in its characteristic burst of unstable energy before settling into the shimmering vertical pool of blue-white light. Through the event horizon came not the expected MALP data stream, but something else entirely. A metallic object, roughly 2 meters long, tumbling through the wormhole at velocity. It hit the stone floor with a screech of alien alloys and skidded to a halt 15 feet from where Colonel Jack O'Neill stood with his P-90 raised. "Well, Shunner, that's new," Jack muttered, moving closer with tactical caution. The object was clearly a pod of some kind, its surface covered in symbols that didn't match any language Daniel Jackson had encountered in 8 years of gate travel. Smooth crystalline panels ran along its length, dark now but etched with intricate patterns that caught the light from their flashlights. Major Samantha Carter knelt beside it, running her scanner over the hull. "Sir, I'm reading residual energy signatures consistent with stasis technology, but the power source is almost completely depleted. Whatever this is, it's been traveling for a very long time." She paused, eyes widening at her readings. "And there's a life sign inside, humanoid, but the biosignature is off, not quite human." Teal'c moved to cover the pod from a tactical position, staff weapon ready. The Goa'uld have been known to send assassins through the chop eye. This may be a trap. Or someone needs help, Daniel said, already examining the symbols with the focused intensity Jack had learned to recognize. "These markings, they're not ancient, not Goa'uld. This is completely unknown. Jack, whatever's in there has been in stasis for decades, maybe longer. If we don't open it soon, whoever's inside might not survive the power failure." Jack weighed the options with the practiced calculation of a career military officer who'd seen too many first contacts go sideways. Unknown alien pod, dying occupant, no immediate threat. His gut said this wasn't an attack. You didn't send assassins in half-dead condition through random stargates. "Carter, can you open it without blowing us all to Kansas?" "I think so, sir. The locking mechanism is failing anyway. Give me 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes felt longer. Sam worked with the methodical precision that had saved their lives countless times, her fingers tracing crystalline interfaces that responded to pressure in unexpected sequences. The Stargate had shut down behind them, the ancient outpost silent except for their breathing and the faint hum of dying alien technology. Then with a hiss of equalizing pressure and a release of vapor that smelled faintly of ozone and something sweeter, the pod opened. Inside, cushioned by material that had degraded into fragments, lay an infant. Human in appearance, perhaps 3 months old, wrapped in a red blanket embroidered with a symbol none of them recognized, a stylized diamond shape containing what might have been a letter or sigil. The child's eyes were closed, chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Oh my God," Daniel breathed. "It's a baby. Someone sent a baby through the Stargate." Sam's scanner was already active, sweeping over the infant with increasing confusion. "Sir, this doesn't make sense. He reads as human, 2 arms, 2 legs, all the right biological markers. But his cellular structure is incredibly dense. I'm detecting what looks like solar radiation absorption at the molecular level, and his mass-to-density ratio is off the charts. This child weighs almost 40 pounds. Jack had seen a lot in his years with the SGC. He'd met aliens who looked human, aliens who wore humans like suits, and aliens who'd created humans as slave labor. But this, a super-dense infant floating through the Stargate in a dying escape pod, this was something else entirely. So what are we saying? Enhanced human? Genetic experiment? Another one of Nirti's projects? Unknown origin, Teal'c observed, studying the child with the analytical eye of a warrior who'd served false gods for a century. But the craftsmanship of this vessel suggests a civilization of great advancement. They would not send their young into the void without great necessity. The infant's eyes opened. They were blue, impossibly clear, And for just a moment as they caught the light from Sam's flashlight, they reflected it back with a faint gleam, like an animal's eyes in headlights, but softer. The baby didn't cry. Instead, he looked directly at Jack with an awareness that seemed far too knowing for an infant lost in space. "We're taking him back," Jack decided. "Carter, can you secure that pod? I want every symbol. Show every component analyzed. Daniel, document everything. Whatever civilization built this, they're more advanced than most of what we've encountered. Teal'c, grab our new friend here." Gently, the Jaffa warrior moved with surprising tenderness, lifting the child from the pod with the care of someone who understood the preciousness of life. The baby settled against his shoulder without protest, those blue eyes still tracking their surroundings with uncanny focus. They dialed Earth, transmitted their IDC, and stepped through the shimmering event horizon. The sensation of gate travel, the momentary dissolution and reconstitution across thousands of light years, was as familiar to them as breathing. But as they emerged in the SGC gate room, 28 levels beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Carter stumbled slightly, her hand going to her scanner. Sir, the child's bioreadings just spiked. Whatever solar absorption I detected before, it's accelerating. He's drinking in the light from our sun like—" She stopped, searching for comparison. "Like a plant, but orders of magnitude more efficient. Sir, I think Earth's sun is powering him somehow." In the gate room's artificial lighting, surrounded by armed SF personnel and the focused attention of the SGC's command staff watching through reinforced glass, the infant from the stars began to demonstrate exactly why his people had sent him away. His grip on Teal'c's tactical vest tightened, and the reinforced fabric crumpled like tissue paper in those tiny fingers. General Hammond's voice crackled over the intercom, measured but carrying the weight of someone who just realized Earth's newest visitor might be its most dangerous. "SG-1, auto take our guest to the isolation room. Dr. Fraser is standing by. And Colonel, let's figure out what we're dealing with before that child learns to walk." Jack met Hammond's eyes through the glass, then looked down at the baby who traveled further than any human in history, powered by a sun he'd never seen until today, carrying secrets in his very cells that might reshape everything they knew about the galaxy. "Yes, sir. Though something tells me we just opened a whole new can of worms, the really superpowered kind. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below." Indeed, the isolation room doors sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, and the strangest first contact in Stargate Command's history officially began. The isolation room had been designed for quarantine protocols, equipped with reinforced glass, atmospheric filtration, and enough sedatives to drop a Jaffa warrior in full Kelnarim. None of those safeguards seemed remotely adequate as Dr. Janet Fraser conducted her examination of the child who'd arrived through the gate wrapped in alien fabric and impossibly dense biology. "His cellular structure is unlike anything in my database," Janet said, her voice carrying through the intercom to the observation room where General Hammond stood with SG-1. "Each cell appears to be actively converting solar radiation into energy at a rate that should be physically impossible. His bone density is roughly 15 times that of a normal infant, yet he's perfectly proportioned. It's as if evolution designed him for a world with much higher gravity." Hammond watched through the glass as the child, they'd temporarily designated him Subject K1 until proper identification could be established, reached for one of Janet's medical instruments with startling coordination. The baby couldn't be more than 3 months old by developmental markers, yet his motor controls suggested something far more advanced. "Doctor, is he dangerous?" "That's the question, isn't it, sir?" Janet replied, gently retrieving her stethoscope before those remarkably strong fingers could crumple it. "He has the temperament of a normal infant, curious, calm, responsive to stimulus, but his strength is already beyond human norms. When he grabbed my finger during the initial examination, I felt the pressure, when he could have broken bones without meaning to." In the observation room, Sam pulled up data on her tablet, cross-referencing the pod's energy signatures with the ancient database they'd recovered from various missions. "Sir, I've been analyzing the crystalline technology from the escape pod. The power systems are centuries beyond anything we've reverse-engineered from the Goa'uld, And the stasis field generation shows principles similar to ancient cryogenic suspension, but more refined. Whoever built this came from a civilization that makes the System Lords look primitive. Which raises the question, Daniel said, pushing his glasses up with the nervous gesture that accompanied his most troubling theories, of why they sent a baby away. Escape pods aren't pleasure cruises. Something catastrophic must have happened to make parents put their infant son in stasis and launch him into space with nothing but hope and a blanket. Teal'c stood with his arms crossed, his expression grave. I have witnessed the Goa'uld destroy countless civilizations. It is possible this child is the sole survivor of his people. The words hung heavy in the air. Hammond had commanded the SGC through first contacts with dozens of alien species, had seen the aftermath of Goa'uld genocide, and had made decisions that kept Earth safe when compassion and protocol conflicted. This was both a refugee who might be Earth's salvation or its newest existential threat, wrapped in a red blanket and currently trying to eat Janet's stethoscope. Colonel O'Neill, Hammond said, his tone shifting to command. Tier, your assessment? Jack had been uncharacteristically quiet, watching the child through the glass, with an expression Sam recognized from the brief, painful time he'd had a son. He's a kid, sir. Lost, alone, probably confused as hell about where he ended up. But Carter's right about the power situation. Whatever he's absorbing from our son, it's making him stronger. We need protocols in place before he figures out how to use those abilities. The NID will want access, Hammond said grimly. The moment word reaches Washington that we have an alien infant with superhuman capabilities, they'll be pushing for full study, possibly relocation to Area 51. Over my dead body, Jack said flatly. We're not handing a baby over to those jackals for dissection. Agreed, Colonel, which means we need to establish his status quickly. Refugee, guest, EU or potential security risk. Hammond's jaw tightened. Dr. Jackson, any progress on translating those symbols from the pod? Daniel pulled up images on the main screen, the crystalline etchings they'd photographed before bringing the pod through the gate. The writing system is completely unknown, but I'm finding structural similarities to several ancient Earth languages. Whoever created this either had contact with Earth cultures thousands of years ago, or parallel linguistic evolution is more common than we thought. This symbol here, he highlighted the diamond shape from the blanket, appears repeatedly. It might be a family crest, a cultural identifier, or possibly his name. His name is Clark, a voice said from the isolation room intercom. Everyone turned. Janet was holding up a small metallic strip that had been sewn into the blanket's fabric, barely noticeable against the red cloth. When exposed to the room's lighting, symbols glowed faintly across its surface. This is some kind of identification tag. I ran it under UV light and the writing became visible. Most of it is in that unknown language. But these characters here, she pointed, they're in English. Or something close enough. C-L-A-R-K. Clark. Sam's fingers flew across her tablet. That's impossible. English as we know it hasn't existed for more than a few centuries. How could an alien civilization thousands of light years away use... She stopped, her expression shifting to startled realization. Unless they'd been to Earth, recently. It or the pod's trajectory was specifically aimed at Earth, and the parents knew our language. Which means this wasn't random, Hammond said. Someone deliberately sent this child to our world. The implications rippled through the room. The Stargate network connected thousands of worlds, and the pod could have emerged anywhere in the galaxy. Instead, it had come through P3X774's gate within hours of SG-1's arrival, as if timed perfectly. Too perfect for coincidence. Teal'c's eyes narrowed. The Goa'uld have spies throughout the galaxy. If this child's civilization was advanced enough to threaten the System Lords, they would have marked it for destruction. An escape pod would be tracked, hunted. Then we have another problem, Jack said. If the Goa'uld know about him and have any idea he ended up in our backyard, odder they'll come looking. As if summoned by the words, the gate room klaxons blared. Walter Harriman's voice cut through the speakers with controlled urgency. Unscheduled off-world activation. We're receiving an IDC. It's the Takra. Hammond moved immediately. Open the iris. SG-1. With me. They reached the gate room as the wormhole established, that familiar vertical pool of impossible physics connecting Cheyenne Mountain to a world light years distant. Through it stepped two figures, one a tall woman with streaks of gray and dark hair, the other a younger man whose eyes held the telltale flash of a go-old symbiote. But these were Takra, allies who shared their hosts as equals rather than masters. "General Hammond," the woman said, her voice carrying the dual-tone resonance of host and symbiote speaking together. "I am Garshaw of the Takra. We come with urgent intelligence regarding an arrival through your Stargate network." Hammond's expression remained neutral, but Sam saw his shoulders tense. "We're listening." "Approximately 6 hours ago, our operatives intercepted communications from Apophis's Hatak fleet. The System Lord has learned of an escape pod containing a child from a civilization his forces destroyed 3 decades ago. A civilization whose people possessed abilities that made them immune to Goa'uld infiltration." Garshaw's eyes found the observation window where the isolation room lay beyond. "The child's genetic code makes him the most valuable potential host in the galaxy, or the greatest threat to Goa'uld supremacy. Apophis is mobilizing his fleet to Earth." In the isolation room, at the infant designated Clark Kent, last son of a dead world, powered by Earth's yellow sun, already strong enough to crush his steel in his tiny fists, reached for Janet's face with a gurgling laugh, completely unaware that he'd just become the flashpoint for an interstellar war. The briefing room had seen countless crisis meetings, but the tension crackling through the air felt different this time. Hammond sat at the head of the table with Garshaw and her companion, a Takra named Malik, flanking him. SG-1 occupied their usual positions, with Sam already pulling up tactical displays on the room's monitors. 30 years ago, Garshaw began, her dual voice resonant with ancient memory, Apophis learned of a world in a distant sector that refused Goa'uld rule. The inhabitants called their planet Krypton. They were a civilization of extraordinary scientific achievement, space travel, genetic engineering, energy manipulation, far beyond even ancient technology in some respects. But their advancement came at a price. Daniel leaned forward, his academic curiosity burning through the urgency. What kind of price?" "Environmental catastrophe," Malik answered. "Our intelligence suggested their planet's core had become unstable. The Kryptonians knew their world was dying, but their science had made them arrogant. They believed they could fix anything, reverse any damage." His eyes darkened. "They were wrong. Apophis saw opportunity," Garshaw continued, "a dying civilization, desperate for salvation. He offered refuge, evacuation ships, for a price. Serve him as hosts or die with their world. The Kryptonians refused. Their scientists accelerated their escape efforts, began building colony ships, smaller vessels. Then Apophis attacked." The tactical display shifted, showing star charts that Sam immediately recognized as being far beyond the normal gate network range. "He used his fleet to destabilize their sun," Garshaw said, "would turn their own star against them. Krypton didn't just die, it exploded. Every man, woman, and child consumed in nuclear fire, or so Apophis believed." Jack's hands tightened on the table. "But someone got out. The pod." "One pod," Garshaw confirmed. "Our operatives monitored the destruction from a safe distance. In the final moments before Krypton's core detonated, a single escape vessel launched from the planet's science sector. It entered a wormhole, not a Stargate, but some kind of artificial spatial tunnel, and vanished. Apophis sent ships to track it, but the trail went cold. Until now." Sam pulled up the data from Clark's pod, comparing energy signatures. "The residual readings from the crystalline technology. These match what you're describing." But how did Apophis find him after 3 decades? "The pod's trajectory brought it into Stargate range 6 days ago," Malik explained. "When it intersected with the gate network on P3X774, the energy signature was detected by Goa'uld long-range sensors. Apophis's Jaffa monitoring stations identified it immediately. He knows the pod came through your gate, General Hammond. He knows the child is here." Hammond's jaw set. "And he wants the boy." "Not as a host," Garshaw said, and her tone carried a warning that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "Kryptonians are biologically incompatible with Goa'uld symbiotes. Their cellular structure, enhanced by yellow sun radiation, destroys any parasite that attempts to bond. Apophis learned this the hard way when he captured several Kryptonian scientists during the initial attack. Every symbiote he tried to implant died within seconds. Then why does he care, Jack asked, if he can't use the kid as a host? Because a being that can kill Goa'uld symbiotes on a cellular level is a weapon beyond measure, Teal'c said quietly, or a threat that must be eliminated. Garshaw nodded. Apophis learned one more thing during his interrogations of Kryptonian prisoners. Under the radiation of a yellow sun, a star like Earth's, Kryptonians develop abilities that make them virtually invulnerable. Strength to shatter steel, speed beyond human measure, the power to fly. The scientists claimed their cells act as living solar batteries, converting stellar radiation into physical capability. Apophis dismissed it as desperate lies. But if even a fraction is true, then we've got an infant Superman growing up in our isolation room, Jack finished. Wonderful. Daniel's mind was working through the implications. The blanket, the English writing on the identification tag. His parents knew where they were sending him. They aimed the pod at Earth specifically. Kryptonian scientists studied Earth extensively, Malik confirmed. They saw humanity as a younger version of themselves. Curious, resilient, still finding their way among the stars. And Earth's sun is a near-perfect match for Krypton's original star, before Apophis corrupted it. The child's parents chose your world deliberately, hoping he would survive, adapt, perhaps even thrive. Sam's scientific mind was already cataloging the challenges. The solar absorption we're measuring is accelerating. In the 16 hours since we brought him through the gate, his cellular density has increased by 12%. At this rate, by the time he reaches physical maturity, he'll be... She stopped, searching for words adequate to the data. Sir, I don't think we have material strong enough to contain him if he decides he doesn't want to be contained. We are not containing a child, Hammond said firmly, but we do need to understand what we're dealing with. Dr. Jackson, you said the symbol on his blanket appears throughout Kryptonian writing. What does it mean? Daniel pulled up the diamond-shaped glyph, its stylized interior design sharp and angular. Based on contextual analysis and the linguistic patterns I'm seeing, it's not just decorative. In most ancient cultures, symbols like this represent hope, heritage, or family lineage. The Kryptonians were advanced enough to encode multiple meanings. This could be the House of El, his family name, or it could be their word for hope, possibly both. Hope, Jack repeated, the irony not lost on him. They sent us hope wrapped in a red blanket, and now we've got a System Lord mobilizing his fleet to steal or kill it. The briefing room door opened. Janet Fraser entered, her expression troubled. General, we have a situation. The child, Clark, he's demonstrating new abilities. He was lying in the examination cradle, and when I stepped away for a moment, he lifted himself. Not crawled, lifted, 6 inches off the surface. He was floating, sir. Stunned silence filled the room. Flight, Garshaw said softly. The legends were true. Hammond stood, military bearings solid, despite the impossibility cascading around them. How long until Apophis arrives? His fleet was 3 days out when we intercepted the transmission, Malik said, but that was 6 hours ago. You have approximately 60 hours before Hatak vessels enter Earth's orbital space. He's bringing 4 motherships, General. He wants the Kryptonian badly enough to risk open war with the Asgard Protected Planets Treaty. The Asgard are engaged fighting replicators in their home galaxy, Teal'c noted grimly. Thor cannot come to our aid in time. Sam pulled up Earth's defensive capabilities, the limited Hatak modifications they'd made to their F-302 fighters, the satellite defense grid still under construction, the single ancient weapons platform they'd discovered in Antarctica, but couldn't yet fully activate. Against 4 Goa'uld motherships, it wouldn't be enough. Jack looked at Hammond, Mana then back at the data, then toward the isolation room where an alien infant was learning to defy gravity. So we've got 2.5 days to figure out how to protect a superpowered baby from a false god who destroys entire civilizations. Anyone got any brilliant ideas? We could evacuate him off-world, Sam suggested. Hide him somewhere in the gate network where Apophis can't track. The child's energy signature is too distinctive now, Garshaw interrupted. Every hour under Earth's sun makes him stronger, brighter to Goa'uld sensors. Apophis will track him through the Stargate network. There is nowhere in this galaxy you could hide him that a determined System Lord wouldn't eventually find. Then we don't hide, Hammond said, his tone carrying the weight of command decisions made when all options looked impossible. So we prepare to fight. Colonel O'Neill, I want every defensive protocol activated. Major Carter, work with the Tok'ra. See if their intelligence can give us tactical advantages. Teal'c, brief our Jaffa allies at the Alpha site. If Apophis wants to start a war over one child, we'll give him one he won't forget. And the kid? Jack asked. What do we do with Clark? Hammond looked toward the isolation room, where through layers of reinforced glass and security protocols, an infant from a dead world was discovering that Earth's yellow sun made him extraordinary. We do what his parents hoped we'd do, Colonel. We protect him, and perhaps when he's old enough, he'll help us protect everyone else. The meeting adjourned with the controlled urgency of military personnel facing an impossible deadline. But as SG-1 filed out, Daniel lingered, just staring at the Kryptonian symbol on the monitor. Hope. That's what Clark's parents had sent across the stars. Hope that their son would survive, that he'd find a world worth protecting, that the last remnant of their civilization wouldn't die with their burning planet. Now Earth would discover if that hope was strong enough to withstand a System Lord's wrath. The briefing room emptied into a flurry of coordinated activity that demonstrated exactly why Stargate Command had survived 8 years of galactic threats. Hammond coordinated with the Pentagon while Sam and the Tok'ra descended into her lab, tactical displays already running probability scenarios for orbital defense. Teal'c headed for the gate room to dial the Alpha site and mobilize their Jaffa allies. But Jack had a different priority. He found Janet in the isolation room, watching Clark with the professional assessment of a doctor who'd seen too many impossible things become routine. The infant was no longer floating. Apparently the effort had exhausted him, but his eyes tracked movement with uncanny precision as medical equipment hummed around him. Doc? Jack said through the intercom. How's our guest handling the whole last survivor of a dead planet thing? Janet looked up, managing a tired smile. Physically, he's thriving. The solar absorption is doing exactly what the Tok'ra described. His cells are converting sunlight into raw biological enhancement. Neurologically, though, he's still an infant. He doesn't understand what's happened, where he is, or that an entire Goa'uld fleet is coming to kill him. In some ways, that's a mercy. Jack studied the child through the glass. Clark had grabbed one of the monitoring cables with those disproportionately strong hands and was examining it with the focused curiosity of a baby discovering texture. The cable's reinforced shielding crumpled slightly under his grip. We can't keep him locked up in here. He's a kid, not a specimen. Agreed. But until we understand the extent of his abilities, he needs more than monitoring, Janet. He needs someone to care about him. Jack's voice carried an edge that came from personal history, from scars that mentioned sons lost and decisions that haunted quiet moments. I'm not letting this turn into an NID science project. Janet's expression softened. Then what are you suggesting, Colonel? Before Jack could answer, Daniel appeared at the isolation room door, slightly out of breath. Jack, you need to see this. I've been working with the Kryptonian database we pulled from the pod's memory crystals. Their language is starting to make sense, and what I'm finding, it changes everything. They moved to Daniel's office, where holographic projections filled the space, three-dimensional reconstructions of Kryptonian glyphs, and what appeared to be video recordings extracted from the pod's storage. Daniel manipulated the displays with practiced ease, pulling up an image that made Jack's breath catch. A man and woman stood in what looked like a laboratory, both wearing clothing that suggested advanced civilization. Form-fitting garments with that same diamond symbol Clark wore on his blanket. The man was tall, dark-haired, his expression carrying the weight of someone making an impossible choice. The woman beside him had her hand on a small pod, the same pod they'd found on P3X774. This is Jor-El and Lara, Daniel said quietly. Clark's parents. The pod recorded their final moments before Krypton's destruction. He activated the playback. The audio was in Kryptonian, but Daniel had managed partial translation, subtitles appearing as the parents spoke. Jack didn't need perfect translation to understand what he was seeing, a father sealing his infant son into an escape pod, a mother pressing her hand against the crystalline surface one last time, both fighting tears as explosions rocked their world beyond the laboratory walls. Jor-El's voice came through, and Daniel's translation scrolled beneath. You will travel far, my son, to a world where you will seem strange, incredible even, but you will not be alone. The people of Earth are good, capable of greatness. They will help you, teach you, and perhaps when the time comes, you will teach them as well. Lara's voice joined his, cracking with grief and desperate hope. Live, Kal-El. Live and show them what our people could have been if we had chosen wisdom over pride. Be better than we were. Be their hope when they need it most. The recording ended with Jor-El activating the pod's launch sequence. Through the laboratory windows behind them, Krypton's sky burned red as the planet's core began its final collapse. Jack stood silent for a long moment, processing what he'd just witnessed. Kal-El, that's his Kryptonian name? His birth name, Daniel confirmed, but they also programmed the pod to adopt Earth customs. Clark is what they chose for him, a common, unremarkable name that would help him blend in. They didn't send him here to be a weapon or a savior. They sent him to be a person, to have a life their world couldn't give him. Except now Apophis knows he exists, and being a person with a normal life just became impossible. Jack ran a hand through his hair, the tactical part of his mind already working through scenarios. What else did you find? Daniel pulled up more data, Kryptonian scientific records, cultural archives, and something that made Jack's eyes narrow. Weapons specifications. Jor-El was a scientist, but he wasn't naive. He knew the galaxy was dangerous. The pod contains detailed information about Kryptonian technology, including defensive systems and energy manipulation theories that make our current understanding look like we're playing with matches. Technology the Tok'ra would kill to have, Jack said. Technology the NID would definitely kill to have. And technology we're going to need if we want to survive Apophis's attack, Daniel finished. Jor-El built that knowledge into the pod deliberately. He was giving Earth a gift along with his son, the means to defend themselves. But Jack, there's a catch. There was always a catch. Which is, the technology is keyed to Kryptonian genetic markers. Most of it won't activate unless someone with Kal-El's DNA accesses it. His parents designed it as a safeguard. The knowledge could only be used by someone they trusted. Someone they knew would be raised on Earth, shaped by human values rather than Kryptonian arrogance. Jack understood immediately. They made their son the key to his own inheritance, which means we can't access the advanced defensive tech without him. And he's 3 months old, Daniel said. Even if we could somehow accelerate his development, teaching an infant to operate technology that could defend against Goa'uld motherships in 60 hours is impossible, Jack finished. He looked back toward the isolation room where Clark, Kal-El, whatever they were supposed to call him, was probably learning that his fingers could crush a steel and his body could ignore gravity. So we're back to conventional defenses and hoping we can hold out long enough for Thor to finish with his replicator problem. Daniel's expression shifted, and Jack recognized the look that preceded his most dangerous ideas. Not necessarily. The pod's database contains something else, a growth matrix that the Kryptonians use for emergency education. It's not quite the same as the ancient repository that downloaded into your brain, but similar principle. Air knowledge transfer through controlled neural stimulation. No, Jack said immediately. Absolutely not. We're not downloading alien information into a baby's brain. I'm not suggesting we do, but Jack, the matrix wasn't designed for infants. It was designed for adolescents, for Kryptonian children who needed to learn their heritage quickly. If we could somehow... Daniel stopped, seeing Jack's expression. You're right, it's too dangerous. We find another way. But the seed was planted and Jack knew it. Somewhere in the Kryptonian technology was the potential to accelerate Clark's development, to turn an infant into someone who could access the defensive systems that might save Earth. The ethical nightmare of that choice sat heavy in the room between them. The intercom crackled. Colonel O'Neill, Dr. Jackson, I report to the gate room immediately. They moved quickly, finding Sam already at the control console with Garshaw. The Stargate was active, chevrons locked, but the wormhole shimmered with an instability that made the technicians nervous. We're receiving a transmission, Sam said, her voice tight. It's from Apophis. He's using a relay system to communicate through the gate network. Sir, you need to hear this. The transmission came through distorted by distance and the limits of Goa'uld technology, but the voice was unmistakable. Deep, resonant with the arrogance of a false god who'd ruled for millennia. Tauri, I know you harbor the Kryptonian child. Surrender him to me within 2 of your days and I will spare your pathetic world. Refuse and I will reduce your planet to ash as I did his. One, you have seen what happens to those who defy the gods. Do not make the same mistake as Krypton. The wormhole collapsed, silence rushing in to fill the gate room. Hammond had arrived during the transmission, his face carved from stone. Major Carter, status of our defenses? 48 hours isn't enough to prepare for 4 Hatak motherships, sir. Even with Takra intelligence on Apophis's fleet movements, we're outgunned and outmatched. Our best-case scenario gives us maybe 6 hours of resistance before orbital defenses fail. Then we evacuate essential personnel and prepare for ground engagement, Hammond said. If Apophis wants Earth, he'll have to take it meter by meter. Jack thought of Clark in the isolation room, of Jor-El and Lara sending their only son across the stars, with nothing but hope and technology locked behind genetic codes, of a civilization that had refused to kneel before false gods and paid with extinction. General, we might have another option, but you're not going to like it. Hammond's office felt smaller, with SG-1. Garshaw and Malik crowded around the conference table. The holographic display Daniel had activated showed the Kryptonian growth matrix, a crystalline structure of impossible complexity that pulsed with faint bioluminescent patterns. Absolutely not, Hammond said after Jack finished explaining. We are not experimenting on an infant with alien technology we barely understand. Sir, I'm not suggesting we like it, Jack replied. I'm saying it might be our only option. The Kryptonian database contains defensive systems that could level the playing field against Apophis's fleet, but they're gene-locked. Without Clark, Kal-El, whatever we're calling him, that technology is useless. Sam pulled up her analysis, data streams flowing across multiple screens. General, I've been studying the growth matrix specifications. It's not mind control or personality alteration. Think of it as compressed education. The Kryptonian equivalent of years of schooling delivered through neural pathways enhanced by their advanced biology. Their children underwent this process routinely around adolescence. Clark is 3 months old, Janet interjected from the doorway, where she'd arrived during the briefing. His neural development is nowhere near adolescent levels, Kryptonian or human. Forcing advanced cognitive patterns into an infant brain could cause permanent damage, assuming it works at all. Which brings us back to conventional defenses, Teal'c said, and certain defeat. Garshaw leaned forward, her dual voice measured. There may be a middle path. The Takra have access to Goa'uld genetic manipulation technology, sarcophagus variations that accelerate cellular development. Combined with the Kryptonian growth matrix, we could theoretically age the child's body to adolescence while implementing the knowledge transfer. His enhanced biology might protect him from the damage such rapid aging would cause a human. Or it might kill him, Daniel said quietly. We'd be gambling with his life to save our own. The moral weight of that statement hung heavy in the room. Jack saw it on everyone's faces. The calculation every SGC mission eventually faced. How many lives was one life worth? When did survival justify the unthinkable? His parents sent him here to live, Jack said. Not to be a weapon we use and discard, and not to be aged artificially and programmed with knowledge he should learn naturally. They trusted us with their son, and the first thing we're considering is turning him into a tool? Hammond's expression was granite. Colonel, I understand your objection, but if Apophis reaches Earth, that child dies along with billions of humans. His parents' hope dies. Everything Krypton represented dies. Again. We have a responsibility to the living, not just to the wishes of the dead. Then let me propose something else, Sam said, her fingers dancing across her tablet. What if we don't age him? What if we use the growth matrix to access just enough of his genetic potential to unlock the defensive technology, but leave his development otherwise intact? Janet moved closer, studying the data. You're talking about selective activation? Using the matrix to trigger specific biological markers rather than full neural upload. It might work. His Kryptonian DNA already carries the access codes for the technology. We'd just be switching them on early. Like giving him the keys but not teaching him to drive, Daniel said. The defensive systems would recognize him as authorized, but he'd still be an infant. We'd operate the technology ourselves. Malik shook his head. The Kryptonian systems require active participation. They are not autonomous weapons platforms. They respond to thought, intention, biometric feedback from an authorized user. The child would need to at least understand what he was activating, even if we guided the process. The door to Hammond's office opened without preamble, a breach of protocol that made Teal'c reach for his absent Zat. But it wasn't an intruder. It was Major Paul Davis from the Pentagon, his expression carrying the bureaucratic menace of Washington interference. General Hammond, I'm here under direct orders from the Joint Chiefs. The NID has been briefed on the Kryptonian situation and has formally requested transfer of the alien entity to Area 51 for comprehensive study and potential weapons development. Jack was on his feet before Hammond could respond. Over my dead body. Colonel, this isn't a request subject to your approval, Davis said, though his tone suggested he hated this as much as they did. The Joint Chiefs consider the alien technology a matter of planetary security. If the child is the key to accessing advanced defensive systems, he needs to be in a facility designed for what? Jack cut him off. Dissection? Experimentation? He's not a thing, Major. He's a 3-month-old baby whose planet was destroyed and whose parents trusted us to do better than treat him like a science project. Hammond raised a hand, silencing the argument. Major Davis, you can inform the Joint Chiefs that Stargate Command maintains custody of all entities arriving through the gate until proper security protocols are established. The child remains here pending full assessment. That's final. Davis looked like he wanted to argue, but Hammond's tone brooked no debate. Understood, General. But sir, you should know. The NID is mobilizing. They'll have official authorization within 24 hours. If you want to maintain control of this situation, you need to produce results that justify keeping the asset here. The asset has a name, Daniel said coldly. Clark, or Kal-El. Not it, not the asset. Davis left with the stiff formality of someone carrying orders he disagreed with, but couldn't disobey. The moment the door closed, Hammond's military bearing cracked slightly. We're out of time and out of good options. Colonel, assemble your team. Dr. Fraser, prepare the medical bay for the procedure. Major Carter, coordinate with the Takra on the technology integration. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Sir, Jack said, we're really doing this? We're going to use that matrix on him? Hammond met his eyes with the weight of command decisions that offered no clean choices. We're going to give that child the chance his parents intended, to help protect the world they chose for him. But we do it carefully, with Dr. Fraser monitoring every step. And if at any point his safety is compromised, we abort. Understood? The team nodded, though Jack could see the ethical discomfort etched on every face. They filed out with the grim purpose of soldiers executing orders they wished they'd never received. In the isolation room, preparations began with meticulous care. Janet had the growth matrix positioned, a crystalline apparatus that looked disturbingly like ancient technology, but hummed with different harmonics. Sam worked with Garshaw to calibrate the Kryptonian access protocols, cross-referencing genetic markers against the defensive technology database. Clark lay in a specialized cradle, oblivious to the debate raging around his existence. His blue eyes tracked the ceiling lights with infant wonder, tiny hands grasping at air. Occasionally, his body would lift slightly, unconscious flight reflexes triggered by contentment, before settling back down. Jack watched through the observation glass as Janet attached monitoring equipment designed to track neural activity, cellular stress, and the dozen other factors that might indicate the procedure was causing harm. Teal'c stood beside him, silent witness to humanity's latest impossible choice. On Chulak, Teal'c said quietly, the Goa'uld would take promising children and implant them with symbiotes before they were old enough to understand what had been done. They called it a gift. We called it slavery disguised as blessing. You think this is the same thing? Jack asked. I think we face the eternal question of warriors. Does survival justify any sacrifice? Or are there lines we must not cross Even if crossing them might save us? Teal'c's expression was grave. I have crossed many such lines in service to false gods. I would not see the Tauri become what they fight against. Janet's voice crackled through the intercom. We're ready to begin. General, requesting final authorization. Hammond stood at the control panel, finger hovering over the activation switch. One press would start the sequence. Kryptonian knowledge flowing into an infant brain, genetic markers activating early, a child from a dead world transformed into Earth's defense against a System Lord's wrath. Wait, Daniel said suddenly. General, there's something in the database I just found. A message from Jor-El. It's addressed to whoever finds his son. The holographic display shifted, showing Jor-El's image once more. But this time his expression was different. Not the grief of final moments, but the measured calm of a scientist leaving critical instructions. The translation scrolled as he spoke. If you are hearing this, my son has survived the journey. For that, I am grateful beyond words. The technology I have included is powerful, dangerous even. It could defend worlds or destroy them. That choice falls to you, to the people of Earth who now protect my child. But know this, Kal-El is not a weapon. He is a person with rights and dignity that must be honored. If you face threats that require the knowledge I've provided, use it wisely. But do not sacrifice his humanity for expedience. Do not let fear turn you into those you fight against. My son deserves better. Your world deserves better. Be better than we were. Silence filled the control room. Hammond's finger moved away from the activation switch. Stand down. We're not using the Matrix. Sir? Sam said, surprise evident. Jor-El was right. We find another way. We defend Earth with the resources we have, the allies we've made, and the principles we claim to fight for. We don't sacrifice children to save ourselves, not even to save billions. Hammond's voice carried absolute conviction. Colonel O'Neill, begin evacuation of non-essential personnel. Major Carter, maximize our defensive capabilities with current technology. Teal'c, rally every ally we have. If Apophis wants a war, we'll give him one on our terms. Jack felt something unclench in his chest, relief mixed with terror at the odds they now faced. Yes, sir. As the team dispersed to their impossible tasks, Jack took one last look at Clark in the isolation room. The infant was asleep now, tiny chest rising and falling, completely unaware that Earth had just chosen his humanity over its own survival. Hope, Jack muttered, remembering the symbol on the blanket. Let's hope your parents were right about us, kid. The next 36 hours transformed Stargate Command into a fortress preparing for siege. Sam worked around the clock with the Takra, jury-rigging Naquata-enhanced railguns to the base's surface defenses. Teal'c returned from the Alpha site with 3 Hatak vessels. Commandeered Goa'uld motherships now crewed by Free Jaffa warriors who'd pledged their lives to Earth's defense. Daniel coordinated with every allied world in the Gate network, calling in favors from the Talon, the Asgard monitoring stations, even the isolated Nox, though their pacifist philosophy meant only intelligence support, not military aid. Jack supervised the evacuation of civilians from Colorado Springs under the cover of a nuclear reactor malfunction drill. The same cover story they'd used half a dozen times before. By hour 48, Cheyenne Mountain housed only essential military personnel, scientists too stubborn to leave, and one Kryptonian infant who'd become the flashpoint for interstellar war. But it was what happened in hour 32 that changed everything. Sam had been running yet another diagnostic on the Kryptonian defensive technology, trying to find any possible workaround that didn't require Clark's biological authorization. The systems were elegant, almost impossible in their sophistication. Energy weapons that could shape Naquata reactions at the molecular level, shield generators that bent space-time rather than simply deflecting impacts, propulsion systems that made Goa'uld hyperdrives look like combustion engines. Then the database activated on its own. General Hammond to the lab immediately, Sam called over the base-wide comm, her voice carrying an edge between excitement and confusion. By the time SG-1 and Hammond reached her workspace, the Kryptonian crystals were projecting a 3-dimensional schematic that filled half the room. But it wasn't defensive technology. It was a building, a fortress of crystalline architecture that seemed to grow organically from geometric principles. What am I looking at, Major? Hammond demanded. I'm not entirely sure, sir. The database unlocked this about 20 minutes ago. It's some kind of structure. The Kryptonians called it the Fortress of Solitude. According to the specifications, it's a repository of their entire civilization's knowledge, designed to be constructed on worlds where Kryptonian survivors might settle. Daniel moved closer, studying the alien script that accompanied the schematics. Yes, it's more than just a library. It's a teaching facility, a cultural preservation archive, and... He stopped, eyes widening. It's a surrogate parent. The fortress was designed to raise Kryptonian children if their biological parents weren't available. You're saying this thing is an AI babysitter? Jack asked. More sophisticated than that. It contains interactive holograms of Kryptonian scientists, philosophers, and teachers. It would educate Clark about his heritage, his abilities, his responsibilities. Everything his parents couldn't be here to teach him. Daniel pulled up more data. And here's the critical part. It's keyed to activate when a Kryptonian child reaches certain developmental milestones. Right now, Clark is too young. But as he grows, the fortress would adapt its lessons to his maturity level. Sam was already running calculations. Sir, the construction requirements are extensive but achievable. We'd need to transport the crystalline growth matrices to a remote location, somewhere isolated, defensible. The fortress would literally grow from a seed crystal using geothermal energy and mineral deposits. How long? Hammond asked. Initial construction, maybe 6 hours once we plant the seed. Full functionality would take weeks as the systems integrate, but basic operations, including the defensive capabilities, could be online within a day. Teal's tactical mind was working through implications. A fortress designed by Kryptonians would be formidable. If it contains the defensive technology we cannot access through conventional means, it might give us a fighting chance, Jack finished. We build Clark's inheritance, use it to defend Earth, and when this is over, if we survive, he's got the teaching facility his parents wanted him to have. Hammond considered, weighing options that all carried impossible risks. Where would we build it? This fortress needs to be far enough from population centers to avoid collateral damage, but close enough for rapid access. Antarctica, Sam said immediately. We've already established an outpost there to study the ancient weapons platform. The fortress could integrate with those systems, potentially even activate them. How? And the isolation gives us tactical advantages. Any Goa'uld forces engaging there would be operating in hostile environmental conditions. The ancient outpost requires the ATA gene to operate, Janet said from the doorway, where she'd been listening. Clark tested positive for genetic compatibility with ancient technology. I don't know if that's coincidence or if Kryptonian and ancient physiology share common ancestry, but the fortress combined with the ancient platform could create a defensive position unlike anything we've deployed. Hammond made his decision with the swift certainty that had kept Earth alive through 8 years of cosmic threats. Do it. Major Carter, coordinate with the Tok'ra on transport. Colonel O'Neill, take SG-1 to Antarctica and secure the site. Dr. Fraser, prepare Clark for transport. If we're going to use his heritage to defend this world, we do it at the location designed to protect and educate him. Sir, Jack said carefully, what about the NID? The moment we move Clark off-site, they'll claim we're hiding him. Let them try. Major Davis can inform his superiors that Stargate Command is implementing defensive measures using assets legally under our jurisdiction. If the NID has objections, they can file them through proper channels, which given Apophis's timeline, they won't have opportunity to do until after this is over. The team mobilized with practiced efficiency. Within 2 hours, a C-130 transport lifted off from Peterson Air Force Base, carrying SG-1, Janet Clark in a specially designed containment cradle, 2 Tok'ra advisors, Huntway in a crystalline seed matrix the size of a basketball that contained the entire blueprint for a Kryptonian fortress. Jack sat across from the cradle during the flight, watching Clark sleep through turbulence that should have woken any normal infant. The baby's chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm, tiny fists occasionally clenching as if grasping at dreams. In 48 hours, this child had gone from anonymous refugee to the focal point of an interstellar conflict, and he didn't even know his own name yet. You thinking about your son? Daniel asked quietly from the adjacent seat. Jack didn't answer immediately. Charlie had been young when the accident happened. old enough to walk, to talk, to laugh at his father's jokes. Old enough to find the gun that Jack hadn't secured properly. I'm thinking about parents who love their kid enough to send him to strangers across the galaxy. About the kind of faith that takes. And whether we're worthy of it? Something like that. Antarctica's brutal cold hit them the moment the transport's rear ramp lowered. The ancient outpost was buried beneath 2 miles of ice, accessible only through the gate or by aircraft willing to brave conditions that made normal human habitation impossible, perfect for hiding a Kryptonian fortress. Sam had already identified the optimal construction site, a geothermal vent system that would provide the massive energy requirements for the fortress's growth sequence. The Takra positioned the seed crystal with mathematical precision, while Sam integrated power conduits scavenged from the ancient outpost. Initiating growth sequence, she announced, meant activating the Kryptonian controls. The crystal began to hum, a harmonic resonance that vibrated through ice and stone. Then it started to grow. Not slowly, like geological formation, but with organic purpose. Crystalline structures erupting from the seed like accelerated plant growth. Angular geometries interlocking with impossible precision. Within minutes, the foundation was laid. Within an hour, walls rose from the ice, translucent blue-white surfaces that seemed to capture and refract Antarctica's pale sunlight. By hour 3, the fortress stood complete, a structure of alien beauty that looked like it had been grown rather than built, because that's exactly what had happened. Spires reached toward the sky, their surfaces inscribed with Kryptonian script that glowed faintly with internal luminescence. And the main entrance was a massive doorway sealed by what appeared to be solid crystal. But as Jack approached with Clark in his arms, the barriers recognized the infant's biosignature and dissolved into shimmering particles. Inside was impossible. The fortress interior stretched larger than its exterior dimensions should have allowed. Either Kryptonian dimensional engineering or the same spatial manipulation the ancients had mastered. Crystalline pillars rose from a floor that seemed to be carved from a single piece of ice, yet radiated warmth. At the chamber's center stood a control platform, and above it, holographic projectors activated in response to Clark's presence. Jor-El appeared, life-sized and so realistic that Jack's hand went instinctively toward his sidearm before he remembered this was a recording. The hologram looked at Clark with an expression that transcended programming. Love, hope, and desperate sadness encoded in light and code. "My son," Jor-El's voice echoed through the chamber. "If you are seeing this, you have survived. You have grown. The fortress will teach you what I cannot, who you are, where you came from, what you might become. But remember always, you are not bound by Krypton's fate. You are not defined by my choices or our civilization's failures. You are Kal-El, last son of Krypton, but you are also of Earth now. Let this fortress guide you, but let Earth's people teach you as well. They will show you things we Kryptonians never learned, how to fail and rise again, how to hope despite impossible odds, how to be more than the sum of our abilities." The hologram shifted, and suddenly Jor-El was addressing them. SG-1, a standing with weapons and wonder in equal measure. "To those who protect my son, thank you. The fortress contains defenses that will shield him and your world from those who would do harm. But use them wisely. With great power comes..." Static interrupted the message, the hologram flickering. Sam's scanner showed massive energy spikes. "Sir, something's wrong. The fortress is detecting an incoming threat. It's activating defensive systems." Warning klaxons that hadn't existed moments before blared through the crystalline halls. The fortress's outer walls shifted, panels rearranging to reveal weapon emplacements that hummed with barely contained energy. Holographic displays materialized, showing Earth's orbital space. 4 Goa'uld Hatak motherships had just dropped out of hyperspace. Apophis had arrived early. The next 36 hours transformed Stargate Command into a fortress preparing for siege. Sam the fortress transformed from architectural wonder to weapons platform in seconds. Crystalline walls became tactical displays showing orbital trajectories, energy signatures, and threat assessments in Kryptonian script that Sam's tablet barely translated fast enough. The Hatak vessels hung in high orbit like golden pyramids of death, their weapon ports already glowing with charged plasma. "They're 3 hours early," Jack said, checking his watch as if the timepiece had personally betrayed him. "Since when do Goa'uld show up ahead of schedule?" "Since they learned we might have defenses they didn't anticipate," Garshaw said, her Takra host studying the tactical displays with centuries of military experience. Apophis is cautious when genuinely threatened. He's testing your response before committing to full assault. Sam's fingers flew across the Fortress control interface, trying to understand systems that operated on principles human science had barely theorized. "The Fortress is tied into some kind of planetary defense network. I'm reading weapon platforms, shield generators, sensor arrays, all dormant until now. It's like the whole structure was waiting for activation authorization." "Which it just got," Daniel said, pointing to where Clark lay in his cradle, surrounded by holographic projections that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The Fortress recognized him. It's protecting him. Teal'c moved to the tactical display, his warrior's instinct cataloging threats with practiced efficiency. 4 Hatak vessels. Approximately 1,200 Jaffa warriors per ship, plus Death Glider complements and Alkesh bombers. Apophis commands from the lead vessel. "I recognize the energy signature of his personal mothership." "Our 3 free Jaffa Hataks are moving to intercept," Sam reported, watching friendly signatures maneuver into defensive positions. "But they're outgunned. Apophis's fleet is fresh, fully armed. Ours are captured vessels running on skeleton crews." The Fortress's main holographic interface shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a communication channel. Apophis's face filled the display. The golden serpent helmet retracted to reveal features that mixed human arrogance with the cold contempt of a parasitic god. His eyes glowed with symbiote presence as he spoke. "Tauri, I see you have been busy. A fortress of Kryptonian design. How resourceful. But it changes nothing. Surrender the child and I will permit your world to continue its pathetic existence. Refuse, and watch as I demonstrate what happens to those who defy the gods." Jack stepped forward, P90 slung casually over his shoulder with the studied indifference that he wielded like a weapon against false gods. "Yeah, about that. See, we've got this policy against negotiating with parasitic snakes who wear people like suits. Also, you destroyed an entire civilization to get what you wanted. So forgive us if we're not real trusting of your promises." Apophis's expression darkened. "You dare mock me, human? I am a god. I have ruled for millennia while your kind cowered in caves. The Kryptonian civilization fell before my power. I know yours will be no different. The Kryptonians didn't have us," Jack replied, "and they definitely didn't have whatever's built into this fortress. So here's my counteroffer. You turn those pyramid ships around, head back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and we'll forget this ever happened. Or you can stick around and find out why Earth's still standing after 8 years of dealing with System Lords. Then die with honor appropriate to warriors, if such is possible for the Tauri." Apophis's image vanished. The Hatak fleet opened fire. Golden streams of plasma converged on Earth's atmosphere, weapons designed to glass cities and boil oceans. But before they could reach the mesosphere, the Fortress activated shields that Earth had never possessed. Energy barriers erupted across hundreds of miles, with geometric patterns of crystalline blue that intercepted the plasma bombardment and dispersed it harmlessly into space. "Impossible," Garshaw breathed. "Those shields are operating on power levels that would require multiple ZPMs. Where is the Fortress drawing that much energy?" Sam's readout showed the answer. Geothermal, solar, and, oh my God, it's tapping into Earth's magnetic field. The Fortress is using the entire planet as a power source. It's not defending this location, it's defending Earth. The free Jaffa Hataks engaged Apophis's fleet with the desperate courage of warriors who'd thrown off slavery. Plasma cannons fired, death gliders swarmed, and space above Earth became a battlefield of ancient technologies wielded by humans and former slaves against the false god who'd ruled them for millennia. But Apophis had numbers and experience. His forces concentrated fire on one free Jaffa vessel, overwhelming its shields through sustained bombardment. The Hatak's hull breached, atmosphere venting, and then the reactor core destabilized. The explosion lit Earth's orbit like a temporary sun, taking 300 Jaffa warriors who'd chosen freedom over servitude. "Target their weapons," Jack ordered. though he had no idea if the fortress would respond to his commands. It did. Weapon ports on the fortress's upper spires rotated toward the sky, and beams of coherent energy, not the scattered plasma of Goa'uld weapons, but focused, precise lances of power, streaked upward. They punched through atmosphere in microseconds and struck Apophis's lead Hatak with devastating accuracy. One shields that had weathered Free Jaffa bombardment collapsed under concentrated Kryptonian firepower. The mothership's ventral surface erupted in secondary explosions. Direct hit on Apophis's vessel, Teal'c reported with grim satisfaction, but he is retreating to a support ship. The System Lord will not remain in a damaged vessel. Sam worked frantically to understand the fortress's capabilities. Sir, I'm reading charge buildup in something the database calls a stellar converter. I think it's some kind of primary weapon, but the power requirements are... She stopped, face going pale. It's drawing energy equivalent to a solar flare. If this fires, the electromagnetic pulse alone could disrupt electronics across half the planet. Can you control it? Hammond's voice crackled through the radio link from Cheyenne Mountain. Major, we're reading those energy spikes from here. If that weapon discharges without proper targeting... Working on it, sir. Sam's fingers flew across crystalline interfaces that reshaped themselves in response to her touch. Kryptonian technology adapting to human operation with unsettling intelligence. I think I can focus the discharge, but we need a target, something that won't cause collateral damage to our own forces. Daniel had been studying the holographic tactical display, watching ship movements with the analytical mind that usually focused on dead languages and ancient cultures. There, Apophis's Hataks are moving into formation. They're going to concentrate fire on a single point in the shield grid. If they can create a breach, they'll push through with ground forces. Then we hit them while they're grouped, Jack said. Southern Sam? Targeting solution locked. But sir, this weapon, I don't know if it's designed for atmosphere. The energy discharge could... Major, take the shot. Sam activated the stellar converter. The fortress's central spire became incandescent, light building until looking directly at it would have caused permanent blindness. Energy drawn from Earth's magnetic field, concentrated through Kryptonian technology that treated physics like negotiable suggestions, focused into a beam that made Goa'uld plasma cannons look like flashlights. The discharge was soundless in the vacuum of space but visible from the ground, a column of blue-white radiance that connected Earth to the stars. It struck Apophis's formation with precision that spoke to targeting systems beyond human comprehension. Shields designed to withstand Asgard weapons buckled instantly. Two Naquata hulls that had weathered centuries of combat vaporized. Two Hatak motherships simply ceased to exist. The remaining vessels, Apophis's damaged flagship and one intact support ship, broke formation, retreating with the desperate speed of false gods discovering their mortality. Death gliders scattered, their pilots choosing survival over loyalty to a deity who'd just proven fallible. They're running, Jack said with the satisfaction of someone who'd spent 8 years proving System Lords could bleed. Apophis is actually running, but Teal'c's expression remained grave. The System Lord is wounded, not defeated. He will return with greater force, or he will seek allies among the other System Lords. Apophis does not forgive such humiliation. The fortress's weapons powered down, the stellar converter's glow fading as energy dispersed back into Earth's magnetic field. Holographic displays showed the retreating Goa'uld vessels entering hyperspace, fleeing toward the outer system before jumping to faster-than-light travel. The Free Jaffa Hataks maintained defensive positions, battered but intact, their crews celebrating victory against impossible odds. In the fortress's central chamber, the holographic Jor-El reappeared, his expression carrying programmed approval. Well done. You have used Kryptonian technology to defend your world with honor and precision. This fortress will continue to protect Earth as long as my son requires sanctuary. But remember, power such as this carries responsibility. Use it wisely. The hologram flickered, then focused directly on Clark's cradle. My son, you are too young yet to understand what has transpired here. But know this, the people of Earth fought for you today. They chose to protect you rather than surrender you to those who would enslave or destroy. When you are old enough to comprehend this moment, remember their sacrifice. Remember that power means nothing without the courage to use it justly. Janet had been monitoring Clark throughout the battle, medical scanners tracking his biosigns through bombardment and stellar weapon discharge. He slept through it, she said with bemused wonder. The entire orbital battle, the fortress activating, everything, and he slept through it like a normal baby. Because he is a normal baby, Daniel said quietly. That's what Jor-El understood. That's what Apophis doesn't get. Clark's power, the fortress, is all of it. It doesn't matter as much as the fact that he's a child who needs protection, guidance, and a chance to grow up in peace. Sam's tactical displays were showing new data, damage assessments, casualty reports from the Free Jaffa vessels, and a concerning reading from Cheyenne Mountain. Sir, we've got incoming communication from the NID. Major Davis is requesting immediate sitrep on the unauthorized deployment of alien weapons platforms. Jack's expression soured. Great. We just fought off 4 motherships and saved the planet, and the bureaucrats want to complain about permits. Hammond's voice came through with steel beneath the calm. Let me handle the NID, Colonel. You secure the fortress and prepare for transport back to the SGC. The crisis isn't over until we're certain Apophis won't return with reinforcements. But even as Hammond spoke, the fortress's sensors detected something else. A single vessel approaching from deep space, moving at speeds that made even Goa'uld hyperdrives look slow. The tactical display identified it with Kryptonian script that Sam's tablet struggled to translate. It's not Goa'uld, she said, confusion evident in her voice. The energy signature is completely different. It's reading as, wait, this can't be right. The database identifies it as Asgard, but the power output is 10 times higher than Thor's ship. The vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's orbit, and communications channels activated automatically. The figure that appeared on the holographic display was unmistakably Asgard, small, gray, with large-eyed, but wearing armor that suggested military rank rather than Thor's scientific bearing. People of Earth, the Asgard said in the species' characteristic calm tone. I am Commander Aegir of the Asgard High Council. We detected unusual energy signatures from your world, specifically Kryptonian stellar conversion technology. We require immediate explanation for how such devices came into your possession. Jack exchanged glances with his team. They just fought off one alien threat. Now Earth's supposed allies were demanding answers about technology they'd used to survive. This ought to be fun, Jack muttered. Daniel, please tell me the Asgard are still on our side? Daniel's expression was uncertain. Theoretically. But Jack, the Kryptonians were advanced enough to concern even the Asgard. If they think we're deploying that level of technology without understanding the implications, then we've got bigger problems than Apophis, Jack finished. In his cradle, Clark stirred, tiny hands grasping at air. His eyes opened, blue and impossibly clear, tracking the holographic displays with infant curiosity. He had no idea that his very existence had just drawn the attention of some of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The fortress hummed around them, weapons dormant but ready, an inheritance of crystalline power built by desperate parents for a son who might never fully understand the sacrifice that had preserved his life. Commander Aegir's vessel remained in high orbit, neither threatening nor departing, the Asgard equivalent of knocking and waiting for the door to open. Hammond made the decision to beam the Asgard directly to the Antarctic fortress rather than risk transporting Clark back to Cheyenne Mountain. Within minutes, the familiar white light of Asgard transportation technology deposited the small gray figure in the fortress's central chamber. Aegir was taller than Thor by perhaps 2 inches, which for Asgard represented significant physical variation. His armor bore symbols that Sam's database identified as military command insignia, and his large black eyes carried an analytical intensity that made even Teal straighten slightly. General Hammond, Aegir said, his voice carrying the precise diction of someone speaking a language learned through perfect comprehension rather than native fluency. Colonel O'Neill, SG-1, and his gaze fixed on Clark's cradle with unmistakable recognition. A Kryptonian survivor. We had believed them extinct. They are, Daniel said carefully. Except for him. Apophis destroyed their world 30 years ago. His parents sent him here as an infant. Aegir moved closer to the cradle with the careful steps of someone approaching something simultaneously precious and potentially dangerous. the last son of Krypton. The Asgard knew of their civilization, brilliant scientists, somewhat isolated, philosophically opposed to the kind of galactic expansion most advanced species pursue. They were principled to the point of rigidity, and it led to their downfall. You knew about Krypton? Sam asked. About what they were capable of? We monitored them from a distance. The Kryptonians developed technology parallel to our own in some areas, surpassing it in others. Their stellar manipulation capabilities, for instance, Aegir gestured toward the fortress's weapon spires, were beyond what the Asgard have achieved. They could reshape solar radiation at the molecular level, convert stellar energy into virtually any form. Highly efficient, also highly dangerous in the wrong hands. Jack's hand rested near his P90, not threatening but ready. And you're here to make sure we're the right hands? I am here to assess risk, Colonel O'Neill. The Asgard have protected Earth because we see potential in your species. Creativity, adaptability, and a certain disregard for impossibility that serves you well. But Kryptonian technology is not simply advanced. It is predicated on biological enhancement that makes its users extraordinarily powerful. A Kryptonian raised under a yellow sun becomes basically invincible, Jack finished. Yeah, we've been doing the math on that. Super strength, flight, probably a dozen other abilities we haven't seen yet because he's 3 months old. We get it. The kid's going to be powerful. That doesn't mean he's dangerous. Aegir's expression remained neutral, but something in his bearing suggested disagreement. Power and danger are not always separable, Colonel. The Asgard have learned through painful experience that even well-intentioned beings can become threats when their capabilities exceed their wisdom. We nearly destroyed ourselves through careless genetic manipulation. We will not permit another species to make similar mistakes. With respect, Commander, Hammond said, his tone carrying diplomatic steel, this child is under Earth's protection. We don't require permission from the Asgard or anyone else to offer sanctuary to a refugee. Sanctuary is one matter, General. Deploying Kryptonian weapons platforms capable of planetary-scale destruction is another. The stellar converter you activated? Do you comprehend what such a device could do if misused? It draws power directly from Earth's magnetic field. Overcharge it, miscalibrate the targeting, and you could destabilize your planet's core or strip away the magnetosphere that protects all life from solar radiation. Sam's face went pale. We didn't know. The systems activated automatically when Apophis attacked. I was operating on best guesses and tactical necessity, which is precisely the concern. Aegir moved to the fortress's control platform, his small hands manipulating the crystalline interface with practiced ease that suggested Asgard and Kryptonian technology shared common principles. This fortress is a masterwork of defensive engineering. It is also an arsenal that could render Earth uninhabitable if operated without proper understanding. The Kryptonians built it for their own people, beings who spent lifetimes studying their technology's implications. You activated it after mere hours of examination. We were defending ourselves, Teal'c said, his voice carrying the weight of a warrior who'd made impossible choices. Would you have us surrender to Apophis? Allow the System Lord to claim this child for his own purposes? I would have you consider consequences beyond immediate survival. Aegir pulled up holographic projections showing the battle's aftermath, energy dispersal patterns, atmospheric disruption, and something that made Janet's medical training kick into alarm. What is that? She asked, pointing to a biological reading that showed cellular damage across a 50-mile radius. Residual radiation from the stellar converter's discharge. Minimal by Asgard standards, but your species lacks natural resistance to such energies. Anyone within the fortress's immediate vicinity during the weapon activation received exposure equivalent to, Aegir consulted his data, approximately 15 rads. Not immediately lethal, but cumulative exposure could cause long-term health complications. The team exchanged glances. They'd been standing meters from the weapon when it fired, bathed in energy that their instruments hadn't properly identified as dangerous. Sam checked her dosimeter, reading exposure levels that confirmed Aegir's assessment. We're fine, Jack said, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as the Asgard. 15 rads? We've been exposed to worse. Ancient repositories, Naquata reactors. That time Daniel got hit by that ribbon device. This is different, Colonel, Janet interrupted, her medical scanner already active and sweeping the team. Kryptonian radiation operates on different principles than what we're used to. It's biologically active, designed to enhance Kryptonian cellular structures. But we're not Kryptonian. Our cells might react unpredictably. Ager's expression softened slightly, or as much as Asgard features could convey compassion. Dr. Fraser is correct. However, the exposure was brief and at minimal levels. We can provide medical countermeasures that will prevent long-term complications. But this illustrates my concern. You deployed weapons you do not fully understand against threats that required immediate response and now face consequences you did not anticipate. So what are you suggesting? Hammond asked. That we dismantle the fortress? Surrender Clark to Asgard custody? Because neither of those options is acceptable. I suggest partnership. Ager's statement hung in the air like an offered hand across a diplomatic chasm. The Asgard will provide technical expertise to help you understand and safely operate Kryptonian technology. In exchange, we ask that you exercise restraint in its deployment and permit us to monitor the child's development. Not control, monitor. The Asgard have no desire to weaponize a Kryptonian child. We simply wish to ensure he grows into his power with wisdom appropriate to its scope. Daniel leaned forward, his academic instincts recognizing an opportunity beneath the warning. You're offering to teach us, to help us become worthy of what we've inherited. Precisely, Dr. Jackson. The Kryptonians were isolationists who trusted no one, and it contributed to their destruction. The Asgard were arrogant scientists who believed we could solve any problem, and it nearly led to our extinction. Humanity has potential to avoid both mistakes, but only if you learn from those who came before. Sam's mind was already cataloging possibilities. If we had Asgard expertise in Kryptonian technology, we could integrate it with our existing systems. The ancient outpost in Antarctica, the modified Hatak vessels, even the Naquata-enhanced weapons we've developed, it could all work together as a comprehensive defense network. A network that protects Earth without requiring a 3-month-old infant to be its primary operator, Janet added. Commander, what would this partnership entail? What access would you require? Regular technical consultations, periodic inspections of the fortress to ensure safe operation. And, Egger looked directly at Clark's cradle, where the infant had begun to fuss. In tiny hands reaching toward the holographic displays with frustrated curiosity, observation of the child as he develops, not invasive study, simply documentation. The Asgard's genetic knowledge might help us understand how Kryptonian enhancement functions, potentially offering insights that could benefit both our species. Jack's protective instincts flared. He's not a lab specimen. No, Colonel, he is the last surviving member of a remarkable civilization, and he deserves every opportunity to understand his heritage and his capabilities. The Asgard can help provide that understanding. Aegir's tone carried unexpected gentleness. We have some experience with being the last of our kind, watching our civilization fade despite our best efforts. Perhaps we can ensure this child does not suffer the same isolation. The fortress's holographic Jor-El activated again, his image appearing beside Aegir with the uncanny timing of programmed intelligence responding to relevant stimuli. The Asgard are honorable, Jor-El's recording said. We studied their civilization from afar and found them worthy of respect, if occasionally rigid in their thinking. If they offer assistance in raising my son, I would counsel acceptance. Kal-El will need teachers who understand what it means to carry the weight of lost civilizations. Aegir inclined his head slightly toward the hologram, an Asgard gesture of acknowledgement to recorded wisdom. Jor-El of Krypton, your reputation as a scientist reached even our distant observations. I am sorry we could not offer aid when your world faced destruction. The replicator threat had already spread to several Asgard colonies. We were occupied with our own survival. The galaxy seems full of civilizations fighting extinction, Daniel observed quietly. The Asgard, the Ancients, the Kryptonians, even the Takra. Maybe that's why Earth matters. We're still fighting, still growing, still figuring out how to survive without the weight of millennia crushing us. Hammond made his decision with the authority of someone who'd learned when to accept help despite pride. Commander Aegir, Earth accepts your offer of partnership. We'll coordinate technical support for the fortress and welcome your guidance in understanding Kryptonian capabilities. But Clark remains under Earth's protection, specifically under Stargate Command's jurisdiction. Any observation of his development happens on our terms. With full transparency. Acceptable, General Hammond. I will personally oversee the technical consultations and coordinate with Supreme Commander Thor regarding long-term arrangements. In the interim, Iger activated his vessel's transporters, and moments later, several cylindrical devices materialized in the chamber. Medical countermeasures for your team's radiation exposure and preliminary technical documentation on safe fortress operation. Janet immediately began distributing the Asgard medical treatment, injections that would neutralize the exotic radiation their bodies had absorbed. Sam dove into the technical documentation with the focused intensity of someone who'd just been handed keys to understanding alien superweapons. Teal'c remained watchful, his warrior's instinct cataloging the new dynamic. When the Asgard had always been allies, but this felt different. Less like gods protecting primitive humans, and more like equal navigating shared challenges. In his cradle, Clark finally managed to grab one of the holographic projections. His tiny fingers passed through the light, but the fortress responded by solidifying the display into tactile crystal. The infant cooed with delight, batting at the newly solid toy with strength that cracked its surface. He learns quickly, Iger observed. Already his nervous system is adapting, his muscle control advancing beyond normal infant development. The yellow sun radiation accelerates everything: physical maturation, neural connectivity, cellular enhancement. By human standards, he will develop extraordinarily quickly while maintaining proper psychological growth. How quickly? Janet asked, a medical concern evident. Difficult to predict precisely. Kryptonian development under yellow sun conditions was never fully documented. They evolved under a red sun. But based on cellular activity I'm observing, I would estimate he'll demonstrate abilities typically associated with toddlers within weeks rather than months. Walking, basic language comprehension, fine motor control, all accelerated by the solar enhancement. Jack looked at the infant who'd survived planetary destruction, traveled across the galaxy, become the target of System Lords, and prompted first contact with Asgard Military Command. Kid's going to have one hell of a baby book. The return to Cheyenne Mountain came with the bureaucratic storm Jack had anticipated. Major Davis arrived with a delegation from the NID, the IOA sent observers, and even Senator Kinsey, perpetual thorn in the SGC's side, made noise about unauthorized alien technology deployment on American soil. But Hammond navigated the political minefield with the skill of someone who'd spent 8 years justifying Earth's survival to people who'd never stepped through the Stargate. The fortress remained in Antarctica, staffed by rotating teams of scientists, military personnel, and Asgard technical advisors. Commander Aegir proved surprisingly collaborative, his initial warnings giving way to genuine partnership as Earth demonstrated willingness to learn rather than simply exploit. Within 2 weeks, Sam had integrated Kryptonian shield technology with the ancient outpost, creating a defensive grid that made Earth genuinely defensible against System Lord assault. But it was Clark who changed everything. Janet's predictions about accelerated development proved conservative. By week 3, the infant was sitting up unassisted, tracking conversations with obvious comprehension, and demonstrating fine motor control that should have taken months to develop. By week 5, he spoke his first word. Not mama or dada, but light, reaching toward the sun, streaming through the medical bay windows with fascinated wonder. His neural pathways are forming at roughly 3 times normal human rate, Janet explained during one of her regular briefings to Hammond. But his emotional and psychological development appears proportional to his physical age. He's not a 3-year-old in an infant's body. He's an extraordinarily advanced infant. The distinction matters. How so, Doctor? Hammond asked. Because he's forming attachments, developing trust, learning to navigate relationships like any child would. He knows the team, recognizes Jack's voice, responds to Sam's technical explanations with curiosity, calms when Daniel talks to him about ancient cultures. He's building the foundation of who he'll become based on these early interactions, which was why Jack found himself in the medical bay more often than tactical necessity required, watching the kid who'd crashed through their gate and upended galactic politics. Clark had reached the stage where he grabbed everything: medical equipment, uniform insignia, Jack's sunglasses, testing grip strength that could already crumple steel if he forgot to be gentle. "Easy there, farm boy," Jack said, retrieving his sunglasses before Clark could accidentally break them. "These are expensive. Well, government issued, so technically cheap, but I've broken in this particular pair." Clark laughed, a pure, delighted sound that carried no awareness of the complications his existence created. His eyes, impossibly blue, fixed on Jack with the kind of trust that made the colonel's chest tighten uncomfortably. "You're getting attached," Daniel observed from the doorway, where he'd been watching with the knowing expression of someone who recognized emotional vulnerability in others. "I'm supervising an asset," Jack replied without conviction. "You're bonding with a child who needs a father figure because his real parents died saving him." Daniel moved into the room, sitting across from Jack with casual directness. "There's no shame in that, Jack. Actually, it's probably the healthiest thing that could happen for both of you." Before Jack could deflect with sarcasm, alarms blared through the base. Not the gate activation klaxons, but something else. Proximity warnings from the deep space sensors the Asgard had helped install. "General Hammond to SG-1, report to the briefing room immediately." They moved with practiced urgency, finding Sam already at the tactical displays with Commander Aegir's holographic presence transmitted from his orbiting vessel. The screens showed multiple contacts entering the solar system. Not Goa'uld pyramid ships, but something worse. Replicators," Aegir said, his calm tone carrying an edge of genuine concern that the Asgard rarely displayed. "A swarm vessel, approximately 3 million individual units. They've detected the Kryptonian technology signature from Earth and adapted their search protocols accordingly." "Replicators?" Jack said. "I thought they were your problem, focused on Asgard space. What the hell are they doing here?" "Learning," Aegir replied grimly. "The replicators consume technology to evolve, adapt, improve. Kryptonian systems represent advancement they've never encountered. They're drawn to it like bugs to light," Sam finished, her face pale. "Sir, if replicators get access to the Fortress technology, they could integrate it into their collective. We'd be facing nanite swarms that can manipulate stellar energy." Teal'c's expression was grave. "The replicators nearly destroyed the Asgard. If they gain Kryptonian capabilities, they'd be unstoppable," Daniel said. "We have to keep them away from the Fortress." From Clark, Hammond's command voice cut through the rising tension. "Options, people. Commander Aegir, can the Asgard intercept? My vessel is equipped with replicator countermeasures, but against 3 million units, I can delay them at best, not stop them. General, the swarm will reach Earth's orbit in approximately 4 hours. Once they make planetfall, conventional weapons will be largely ineffective. The replicators will disassemble your technology to build more of themselves." Sam was already running calculations, her mind working through impossible problems with the determination that had saved Earth countless times. "The stellar converter, if we modify it to emit a disruptor pulse instead of a focused beam, we might be able to shatter their molecular cohesion across a wide area. That would require recalibrating the Fortress's entire power distribution network," Aegir said. "Even with Asgard assistance, such modifications would take days." "Then we evacuate the Fortress," Jack suggested. "Get Clark and the technology out of there before the bugs arrive." "The replicators will track him," Janet said from the medical bay, where she'd been listening via comlink. "His biosignature is too distinctive now, enhanced by months of solar absorption. They'll follow wherever he goes." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. The 3 million replicators, 4 hours, technology that could doom the galaxy if it fell into the wrong mechanical hands, and a child who'd survived one extinction-level threat now facing another. "There's one more option," Daniel said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "The replicators consume technology. They're machines that learn by assimilation. But Clark isn't technology. He's organic, biological, enhanced by solar radiation, but fundamentally alive. What if we use that?" "Explain," Hammond ordered. "The Kryptonians evolved under a red sun, developed civilization, built incredible technology. But their real advancement came when Jor-El and others theorized what would happen under a yellow sun. Biological enhancement beyond anything they'd engineered artificially. Clark represents that theory made real. He's organic technology, if you will. Living proof that biology can surpass mechanics. Sam's eyes widened as she followed the logic. You're suggesting we use Clark as bait? Daniel, he's barely 6 months old. I'm suggesting we use what makes him unique. The replicators assimilate technology by breaking it down to component pieces and rebuilding it into their collective. But they can't assimilate organic matter. They've tried with the Asgard, it doesn't work. Living tissue operates on principles they can't replicate. Agir's hologram shifted, showing the kind of intense focus that suggested rapid calculation. Dr. Jackson may be correct. If the replicators detect a technology signature, but discover it's biologically integrated rather than mechanically accessible, it could confuse their assimilation protocols. They would attempt to interface with the child, one fail and potentially enter an error state that would make them vulnerable to disruption. You want to use a baby as a computer virus, Jack said flatly. I want to use the fact that Clark is alive, Daniel corrected. The replicators are brilliant at adapting to technology. But life, genuine, organic, unpredictable life, is something they've never successfully processed. It's their fundamental weakness. Janet's voice came through with medical authority. This is insane. You're talking about exposing an infant to nanite swarms that disassemble matter at the molecular level. One mistake, one calculation error, and they'll kill him trying to understand what he is. Or he'll survive like he survived everything else, Jack said, surprising himself with the words. Because the kid's tougher than any of us want to admit. Kryptonian biology, a yellow sun enhancement, whatever combination of genetics and physics his parents engineered, he's built to survive impossible situations. Hammond's expression carried the weight of command decisions that offered no good choices. Commander Agir, if we attempt this, using Clark's unique biology to disrupt replicator assimilation protocols, what are the odds of success? Unknown, General. The Asgard have never attempted such a strategy because we lack the necessary biological component. But theoretically, if the child's enhanced cellular structure can resist replicator nanite penetration long enough to create systemic errors in their collective processing, then we might have a chance, Sam finished. She looked at the tactical display, showing the replicator swarm advancing with mechanical inevitability. Sir, I hate this plan. But I hate the alternative more. If those things reach the fortress and assimilate Kryptonian technology, Earth becomes the launching point for a replicator evolution that could threaten the entire galaxy. Teal'c stood silent, his warriors bearing rigid with the knowledge that battles sometimes required sacrifices no one wanted to make. The child has already endured planetary destruction and System Lord assault. Perhaps it is his fate to face this threat as well. Fate, Jack muttered. I really hate that word. The decision fell to Hammond, as it always did. The general looked at each member of SG-1, saw the conflict in their eyes, the desire to protect Clark warring with the necessity of using every asset available to defend Earth. He thought of Jor-El and Lara, sending their son into the unknown with nothing but hope. He thought of the millions of people on Earth who had no idea their survival might depend on an infant from the stars. Prepare the fortress, Hammond ordered. We use Clark's biology to disrupt the replicators, but we do it with every possible safeguard. Dr. Fraser, I want medical monitoring at levels we've never attempted. Major Carter, work with Commander Agir on containment protocols that protect the child while still allowing replicator contact. Colonel O'Neill, I'll be with the kid, Jack said before Hammond could finish. Someone he trusts should be there when the bugs show up. Agreed. SG-1 deploys to Antarctica in 30 minutes. Commander Agir, coordinate your vessel's countermeasures with our defense grid. We give the replicators exactly what we want them to see, a Kryptonian child whose biology they can't comprehend. And when they error out trying to assimilate him, we hit them with every disruption weapon we have. The briefing ended with grim determination, and Jack headed back to the medical bay, where Clark was playing with a holographic block that the fortress had created for him, batting it with tiny hands strong enough to shatter steel, laughing as it bounced with physics-defying elasticity. Hey, kid, Jack said quietly, picking up the infant who'd become the center of yet another impossible mission. "We're going on a field trip. You're not going to like it much, but you're tougher than you look, right?" Last son of Krypton, survivor of extinction, apparently also our secret weapon against mechanical bugs from space. Clark grabbed Jack's finger, squeezing with casual strength that would have broken bones if the child understood his own power. His blue eyes fixed on Jack's face with absolute trust, the kind of faith that made the burden of command feel heavier than any weapon. "Don't make me regret this," Jack whispered, carrying Clark toward the transport that would take them to Antarctica, to the fortress, to the confrontation with 3 million replicators who were about to discover that life was the one thing they could never truly understand. The fortress's central chamber had been transformed into a tactical operations center that blended Kryptonian crystalline architecture with human military pragmatism and Asgard technological precision. Holographic displays showed the replicator swarm's approach, a cloud of metallic insects moving with collective intelligence that made even Eager's usual composure show strain. 2 hours until atmospheric entry, Sam reported from her station, where she'd integrated her laptop with Kryptonian interfaces in ways that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. The swarm is maintaining formation, suggesting coordinated assault rather than random consumption. They know what they're after. Jack stood near the central platform where Janet had established a medical monitoring station around Clark's specially designed containment field. The infant sat surrounded by translucent energy barriers that would allow replicator contact while preventing catastrophic swarm convergence. He played with crystalline toys the fortress generated, oblivious to the mechanical threat descending from orbit. "Final equipment check," Hammond's voice came through the comm from Cheyenne Mountain. "Colonel, confirm all personnel are in position." "SG-1 ready, sir. Agir's vessel is holding position above the fortress. Free Jaffa Hatoks are maintaining orbital perimeter, though Teals has made it clear they're basically flying coffins against replicators." "They will buy us time," Teal'c said from his position near the fortress's weapon controls. "Even a warrior's death against impossible odds serves purpose." Daniel had positioned himself at the holographic interface displaying Jor-El's recorded knowledge. "I've been reviewing everything the Kryptonians documented about biological enhancement. There's a passage here. Jor-El theorized that yellow sun radiation doesn't just strengthen Kryptonian cells, it fundamentally alters their quantum signature, makes them exist slightly out of phase with normal matter. If he's right, replicator nanites might not be able to properly interface with Clark at the molecular level. "Might," Janet emphasized, her medical scanner trained on Clark's biosigns. "This entire plan is built on theoretical physics and desperate hope." "So Tuesday," Jack said with the gallows humor that had carried him through 8 years of cosmic impossibilities, "the first replicators entered Earth's atmosphere in a controlled descent that demonstrated intelligence far beyond simple mechanical programming. They didn't burn up on re-entry. Instead, they configured themselves into aerodynamic formations that rode the thermal currents down toward Antarctica with terrifying precision." "Here they come," Sam said unnecessarily, as every display in the fortress showed the swarm fragmenting into multiple assault vectors. "They're splitting up, probably trying to overwhelm our defenses through simultaneous attacks on multiple entry points." Ager's holographic presence materialized beside her. "The replicators have analyzed the fortress's shield configuration and identified potential vulnerabilities. I am adjusting the Asgard countermeasure frequencies, but they adapt quickly. General Hammond, you should know, this swarm is more advanced than any we've encountered. They've assimilated technology from multiple species since leaving Asgard space." The fortress's defensive systems activated automatically, recognizing the threat with programming that Jor-El had encoded 3 decades ago. Energy weapons tracked replicator clusters, firing with precision that vaporized hundreds of units per second. But there were millions, and for every unit destroyed, others learned from the attack pattern and adapted. Replicators hit the fortress's outer shields like metallic rain, their bodies reconfiguring on contact to burrow through energy barriers that should have been impenetrable. The crystalline walls began to show stress fractures as nanites found microscopic weaknesses and exploited them with mechanical efficiency. Shields at 70%, Sam reported, her fingers flying across controls. "They're eating through the outer perimeter faster than the fortress can regenerate. At this rate, we've got maybe 15 minutes before they breach the central chamber. Then we spring the trap, Jack said, moving to Clark's containment field. The infant had stopped playing, his enhanced senses apparently detecting the threat even if he didn't comprehend what it meant. Blue eyes tracked the holographic displays showing metallic swarms, and tiny fists clenched with instinctive defensiveness. Janet's hand hovered over the containment field controls. Once I lower these barriers, the replicators will swarm him immediately. Colonel, if this doesn't work... It'll work, Jack said with more confidence than he felt. The kid survived everything else. He'll survive mechanical bugs trying to figure out why he's not a computer. The fortress shuddered as replicators breached the outer chambers. Metallic clicking echoed through crystalline corridors. Thousands of segmented legs finding purchase on alien surfaces. Collective intelligence processing data faster than human thought. They were learning the fortress's architecture, mapping its systems, identifying the technology signature that had drawn them across light years. Breaching inner perimeter, Teal'c announced, his staff weapon tracking the first wave of replicators that skittered into view. He fired plasma bolts vaporizing units that immediately reformed from scattered components. They are adapting to our weapons. Everyone fall back to the central platform, Jack ordered. Let them come. So, that's the whole damn point. SG-1 consolidated their position around Clark's containment field as replicators flooded the chamber. Hundreds became thousands, metallic bodies flowing across walls and ceiling with insectile grace. They ignored the humans initially. Biological targets weren't their priority when technology beckoned. Instead, they converged on the fortress's systems, beginning assimilation of Kryptonian crystalline architecture. But then they detected Clark. The replicator's collective intelligence processed the biosignature with confusion that manifested as hesitation, a momentary pause that rippled through the swarm. Here was the technology signature they'd tracked, but it was integrated with organic matter in ways their programming couldn't categorize. Not a device, not a computer system. Something alive that radiated energy their sensors identified as advanced, but their assimilation protocols couldn't properly target. They're confused, Daniel said, watching the swarm's behavior with academic fascination despite the terror of the moment. They know Clark is the source of the signature, but they can't figure out how to interface with him. Lower the containment field, Jack ordered. Janet's hand trembled slightly, but she executed the command. The energy barriers dissolved, leaving Clark exposed on the platform with nothing between him and 3 million mechanical predators except 6 months of Kryptonian biology and the desperate hope that life would prove more complex than machines could comprehend. The replicators swarmed. They covered Clark in seconds, even metallic bodies flowing over the infant with the precision of nanite surgery, attempting to dissect and catalog. Their segmented legs found purchase on skin that should have yielded to molecular probes but didn't. Their interface tendrils extended, seeking the technological core that their sensors insisted existed within this organic package. Clark screamed, not the cry of an infant in pain, but something else, a sound that carried harmonics no human throat should produce, powered by lungs that processed oxygen with Kryptonian efficiency and vocal cords enhanced by solar radiation. The scream contained frequencies that made the fortress's crystals resonate in sympathy, and the replicators began to malfunction. It's working, Sam said, her scanners showing cascading errors propagating through the swarm's collective network. They're trying to interface with his cellular structure, but Kryptonian biology operates on quantum principles their nanites can't process. They're entering recursive error loops, trying to make sense of data that doesn't conform to mechanical parameters. The replicators on Clark's body froze, their movements becoming erratic. Some tried to pull away, receiving override commands from the collective to continue assimilation. Others simply stopped functioning, their internal logic processors overwhelmed by biological complexity that shouldn't exist according to their understanding of reality. But Clark wasn't passive. His infant instincts recognized threat, and Kryptonian physiology responded with reflexes encoded in genetics designed for survival. His tiny hands grabbed replicator units, one in the casual strength that crumpled medical equipment now crushed metallic bodies into component fragments. His skin, enhanced by months of yellow sun exposure, proved impervious to nanite penetration. Where replicators attempted molecular disassembly, they encountered cellular structures that existed slightly out of phase with conventional matter. exactly as Jor-El had theorized. "He's fighting back," Janet said with awe and horror mixing in her voice. "A 6-month-old infant is fighting back against replicators." "Now," Jack ordered. "Hit them while they're confused." Aegir's vessel opened fire from orbit, Asgard disruptor beams calibrated specifically for replicator molecular cohesion. The Free Jaffa Hatox added plasma bombardment, targeting swarm concentrations that had entered error states. The Fortress's own weapons activated, so stellar energy pulses designed by Kryptonian scientists who'd apparently anticipated technological threats, even if they'd failed to save their own world. The replicators died by thousands, their collective intelligence fragmenting as units lost connection to the swarm network. Those still attempting to assimilate Clark found themselves isolated, their programming deadlocked between commands to consume technology and the growing realization that what they were trying to consume was fundamentally incompatible with their existence. Clark grabbed another replicator unit, his blue eyes wide with infant rage at things that had hurt him, scared him, violated the sense of safety that Janet and SG-1 had worked to build over months of care. He threw the unit, actually threw it, despite lacking the motor control for such actions, and it shattered against the crystalline wall with force that shouldn't have been possible for someone his size. "He's accessing abilities faster than projected," Janet said, medical readouts showing neural activity and muscle coordination spiking to levels associated with children years older. "The threat response is accelerating his development." The battle turned into extermination. Replicators that had arrived as an unstoppable swarm now died in cascading waves, their collective intelligence collapsing under the weight of errors that biological complexity had introduced. Some units attempted retreat, skittering toward exit points only to be caught by Asgard beaming technology that transported them directly into the sun. Within 20 minutes, it was over. The fortress's central chamber was littered with inactive replicator components, metallic fragments that would be collected, studied, and ultimately destroyed to prevent any possibility of reconstruction. Clark sat amid the debris, his infant face streaked with tears but his body unmarked. Kryptonian invulnerability having protected him from what should have been certain death. Jack moved immediately, scooping the child up despite Janet's protests about contamination protocols. Clark grabbed onto his tactical vest with desperate strength, tiny body shaking with sobs that tore at everyone present. "It's okay, kid," Jack said quietly, his voice carrying a gentleness that deployment and command had long ago tried to erase. "You're okay. The bad bugs are gone. You did good. You did really good." "Biosigns are stabilizing," Janet reported, her scanner showing Clark's enhanced physiology already recovering from the stress. "No permanent damage. Elevated stress hormones, but appropriate for someone who just survived." She stopped, searching for adequate description. That, Aegir's hologram showed what might have been Asgard equivalent of respect. The child's biology proved more resilient than even our calculations suggested. The replicators could not adapt because life itself was the variable they couldn't account for. "General Hammond, Earth has achieved something the Asgard attempted for decades, a reliable defense against replicator assimilation. At the cost of traumatizing an infant," Daniel said quietly. "This worked, but at what price?" "The price of survival," Teal'c answered, "as it has always been. The child lives, Earth endures. The replicator threat to this sector is ended. These are victories even if the means disturb our conscience." Sam was already analyzing the aftermath, her scientific mind cataloging everything despite the moral discomfort. "Sir, the data from this engagement, how Clark's biology interfaced with the replicators, the error patterns it created, this could revolutionize our understanding of both organic and mechanical systems. The Asgard could use this to finally overcome their replicator crisis." "Then share it," Hammond ordered through the comm. "Commander Aegir, you provided assistance when we needed it. The least we can do is offer what we've learned to help your people." "But," his voice hardened, "the child is not a weapon. This was a desperate measure in desperate times. No, it doesn't set precedent for using Clark in future conflicts." "Understood, General, and agreed. The child has already endured more than any being should experience in a lifetime." Aegir's image flickered slightly. Asgard technology showing the strain of extended holographic projection. "With your permission, I will return to Asgard space and present this data to the High Council. Perhaps Kryptonian biology will provide the key we've sought for so long. As Ager's vessel departed, the cleanup began. Scientists moved into the fortress to catalog replicator remains. Engineers assessed damage to the crystalline systems. Medical teams examined everyone who'd been exposed to potential contamination. But Jack just held Clark, letting the kid cry himself into exhausted sleep against his shoulder. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he acknowledged that this had become more than protecting an asset or honoring dead parents' wishes. This was personal now. This was a kid who'd trusted them and been put in harm's way because survival demanded it. "We need to do better," Jack said to no one in particular. "He's 6 months old and he's already fought system lords and replicators. What's next? Ori Priors? Ascended beings? Where does it end?" "When he's old enough to choose for himself," Daniel answered. "Jor-El sent him here to live, not to fight. We've kept him alive so far. Now we need to let him be a child as much as possible, given what he is." Janet had finished her medical assessment, confirming what her instruments already showed. Clark was physically unharmed, though the psychological impact of the replicator assault remained unknown. "I'm recommending extended observation and counseling, even if he's too young for traditional therapy. He'll need stability, routine, people he can trust completely." "He's got that," Jack said, surprising himself again with the certainty. "He's got us. SG-1. The SGC. We've protected him this far. We keep going." The fortress hummed around them, Kryptonian technology designed by desperate parents continuing its purpose of safeguarding the last son of a dead world. Outside, Antarctica's brutal cold pressed against crystalline walls. Above, stars shone in patterns that included systems destroyed by false gods, civilizations lost to mechanical swarms, and somewhere out there, the scattered atoms of a planet called Krypton that had refused to kneel and pay the price. But inside the fortress, an infant slept against the shoulder of a man who'd lost his own son and found unexpected purpose in protecting someone else's. Clark's tiny chest rose and fell with breathing that would never tire, powered by cells that would never age normally, enhanced by a yellow sun that would make him extraordinary whether he wanted it or not. The immediate threats were ended. Apophis had retreated. The replicators were destroyed. But the future stretched ahead with infinite complications. Questions about Clark's place in the universe, his role in Earth's defense, his right to choose his own path versus the destiny his parents and circumstances had thrust upon him. For now, though, he was just a child, a very powerful, impossibly resilient, genetically enhanced alien child from a civilization that no longer existed. But still a child. And Earth would protect him. The months following the replicator crisis brought changes that rippled through Stargate Command and Earth's understanding of its place among the stars. The fortress in Antarctica became a permanent installation, jointly operated by the SGC, Asgard technical advisors, and a rotating staff of scientists who treated Kryptonian technology with the respect it demanded. The data from Clark's biological resistance to replicator assimilation reached the Asgard High Council, and within weeks, Commander Aegir reported the first successful trials of bio-integrated countermeasures that promised to turn the tide in their ancient war. Clark himself grew with the accelerated development Janet had predicted, though his emotional maturity remained mercifully appropriate to his chronological age. Watched by his first birthday, measured from the day SG-1 found him on P3X774, he was walking, speaking in simple sentences, and demonstrating the curiosity that his parents had hoped Earth would nurture rather than suppress. The fortress's holographic Jor-El provided cultural education about Krypton's history, but it was SG-1 who taught him what really mattered. Daniel's patience with endless questions, Sam's wonder at scientific discovery, Teal'c's quiet strength and warrior's honor, Janet's compassionate medical care, and Jack's gruff affection that hid deep protective instinct. The political battles over Clark's custody continued, but Hammond held firm. The child remained under Stargate Command's jurisdiction, classified as a refugee granted asylum, rather than an alien asset to be exploited. The NID made periodic attempts to gain access, but each time they encountered bureaucratic walls that Hammond had spent years learning to construct. Senator Kinsey found himself outmaneuvered by generals who'd saved Earth too many times to be dismissed, and eventually even Washington's most ambitious politicians recognized that some battles weren't worth fighting. Apophis never returned to Earth. Tok'ra intelligence suggested the System Lord had been too humiliated by his retreat to risk another confrontation, especially after word spread through the Goa'uld Empire about a Kryptonian child who'd survived destruction of 2 motherships. Other System Lords began investigating Krypton's fate, searching for additional survivors or salvageable technology, but they found only radioactive debris where a civilization had once thrived. Clark remained unique, the last of his kind, and erased by humans in a galaxy that feared and coveted his potential in equal measure. The fortress became more than a defensive installation. It evolved into exactly what Jor-El had intended, a sanctuary where Clark could learn his heritage without being consumed by it. A place where Kryptonian knowledge preserved civilization's best achievements, while Earth's influence taught him values his own people had struggled to maintain. On clear Antarctic nights, Jack would sometimes fly down in a puddle jumper and find the kid floating outside the fortress. Not high, not testing his limits yet, just hovering a few feet off the ground with the wonder of a child discovering he could fly. "You know," Jack said during one such visit, watching Clark drift through the air with awkward grace, "your parents would be proud. Not because you can fly or throw things really far or survive bugs from space. Because you're a good kid who asks questions and cares about people and still cries when you're scared. That's the part that matters." Clark landed, a controlled descent that only wobbled slightly, and looked up at Jack with eyes that carried alien biology and human trust in equal measure. "When I'm bigger," he said in the careful pronunciation of a child still mastering language, "I help people like you help people." "Yeah, kid," Jack replied, feeling the weight of that promise settle around a child who'd already survived more than most adults would face in a lifetime. "When you're bigger, if you want to help people, we'll teach you how. But you get to choose. And that's what your parents wanted, for you to have choices they couldn't give you on Krypton." The Stargate stood ready in Cheyenne Mountain, that ancient ring of possibilities connecting Earth to thousands of worlds where humans struggled under false gods or built civilizations in the ruins of greater ones. SG-1 continued their missions, bringing allies together and facing new threats with the confidence of teams who'd learned that survival wasn't about individual power, but collective determination. The Tok'ra shared intelligence. The Free Jaffa forged their nation. The Asgard integrated Kryptonian biological insights into defenses that finally turned the tide against replicators. And Clark grew, powered by Earth's yellow sun, shaped by human values, carrying the last fragments of Kryptonian culture into an uncertain future. His parents had sent him across the stars wrapped in hope and a red blanket, trusting strangers to protect what they could not. That trust had been honored, tested in battles against system lords and mechanical swarms, and ultimately proven worthy. The galaxy remained dangerous. Ori threats loomed on the horizon, ancient enemies stirred, and new challenges awaited beyond gates yet unexplored. But Earth faced them with resources it hadn't possessed before. Kryptonian technology integrated with ancient knowledge. Asgard partnership deepened through shared crisis, and the simple fact that a child from a dead world had chosen to call this planet home. In the fortress's central chamber, Jor-El's hologram delivered its final recorded message to a son who could now understand the words, "You are Kal-El, last son of Krypton, but you are also Clark, child of Earth. Never forget either heritage, for both define who you might become. Krypton gave you abilities. Earth will give you purpose. Together they make you extraordinary not because of what you can do, but because of what you choose to do. Live well, my son. Make us proud." The recording faded, but its truth remained. Clark stood at the intersection of two worlds, one destroyed, one struggling to survive, and carried the potential to honor both through the choices he'd make when old enough to understand their weight. For now, he was simply a child, learning to fly under Earth's sun, protected by soldiers who'd become family, inheriting knowledge from civilizations lost and found. The Stargate hummed in its cradle beneath Cheyenne Mountain, ready to connect Earth to infinite possibilities. And somewhere in Antarctica, the last son of Krypton laughed as he discovered that racing puddle jumpers was more fun than any training simulation, that Earth's people told better stories than Kryptonian holograms, and that having a home worth protecting mattered more than all the powers yellow sunlight could provide. Superman had landed in the Stargate universe. But more importantly, a child named Clark had found a world that would teach him not just to survive, but to live.